This video demonstrates the basic information necessary to install, operate, and maintain the Kartrol cart shutdown system. Your particular track and certain procedures may differ, but following these basics will enhance a safe and fun track experience for you and your guests.
Hello again, it's Bob Wheeler, your safety buddy from J&J Amusements. Today we're going to talk all about shutdown systems. The shutdown system is your best friend when it comes to the three most important words in the go-kart track business: safety, safety, and safety. You get my point? These magic buttons are your best friend when it comes to controlling the pace of the carts out on the track. Maybe you got to slow them down because a customer's getting a little frisky. You might have an attendant out on the track helping one of your customers. And of course, the most important time of any session, when the carts are returning safely to the pit area, you can control their speed. Now let's take a look at some of the components of your shutdown system. Let's start out with the main transmitter. Now there are several different types of main transmitters. You got your EX56 and the EX52, and both of those babies come in either a full console or a mini. The main transmitter broadcasts a signal to the carts and is powered by a low voltage transformer that plugs into a standard 110 outlet. The EX56 lets you shut down individual carts or the entire fleet at once. Now that's power. The EX52 has the same capabilities as the 56, but it also has a crawl function that lets you slow those babies down to about 5 miles an hour. The EX52 will allow carts going uphill to reach 5 miles an hour, but know this: it cannot slow the momentum of carts going downhill. The laws of gravity are not repealed by the EX56 or the EX52. Now, for either one of these systems, though, the main transmitter comes in a full console, which allows the attendant to shut down individual carts, groups of carts, or the entire fleet at once. The mini console shuts down all carts. In most cases, both main transmitters also control the pit control transmitter. Now, some of your parks might have the pit control transmitter connected to the traffic signals. Let's go to the pit control transmitter. The attendant usually operates the pit control transmitter via a switch on the main console. The pit controller's antenna is laid into the track in saw cuts. Now, this transmitter sends out a local signal that can be adjusted to increase or decrease its strength. It should also be set so the carts shut off just as they pass over that antenna. So this way, at the end of a session, it's activated by either the attendant or the traffic signal, and the carts will come into the pit area nice and slow. Now, either the management or a head mechanic should always establish the settings on this transmitter. Now you got your handheld transmitter. This is an additional way to shut down the carts. It's usually operated out on the track by an attendant in an area that cannot be seen by the main console, sort of like your flag man. The handheld allows the field attendant to shut down carts in a local area, so it's like a local yellow. On a small track, the handheld can shut down all the carts. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of cart receivers. Now, both the EX56 and the EX52 are ignition systems. They shut down the carts by cutting the spark to the engine. The EX52 servo model uses a little servo motor to pull the governor arm on the motor to either the crawl position or full stop. All right, let's talk about the main console now. One of the most important decisions you'll make is where to place the console. It should be near the pit area, and the operator should have as complete a view of the track as possible. You'll power the console with this low voltage transformer. It'll plug into a 110 volt outlet. The console itself sends a radio signal out to all the carts while they're on the track. Now, where are you going to put that bad boy? Well, where you put your pit control transmitter depends upon the nature of your track. If your track is completely level going into the pits, it works really well if you put the pit control transmitter about 80 to 100 feet away from the pit area. If the carts go a little bit uphill on the track right before they go in the pits, you might put the transmitter closer to the entrance. But if they're coming downhill going in the pits, you might wish to place it further away. Now, to turn on the pit control transmitter, there's a switch on the main transmitter that shoots 12 volts from the main transmitter to the pit transmitter. When you got your pit transmitter, there's about 3 feet of wire on the left side of the unit. Supplied along with the pit transmitter is another piece of wire. It's about 2 feet long, and it had a phono plug on it. Well, that plugs into the back of the main transmitter. Now you need to complete this connection between the main transmitter and the pit transmitter. Now this is pretty easy for your electrician to do during construction of the track. And we really suggest using conduit to route the wire through, because you never know when your landscaper is going to come blasting through with the weed whacker, and you know what can happen to the wire. You put conduit in the first time, it's all set. All right, well now you got power to the pit control transmitter. Next you need to attach and lay the antenna in the track. Now the antenna supplied with the pit transmitter is called a dual loop antenna. Some of the older models have single loop antennas. The antenna plugs into a BNC connector on the bottom of the pit control transmitter. That's the same side of the unit to the right side of the power cable. And about 3 feet below the BNC connector, there's a splitter that divides the antenna into 2 separate leads. You're going to need 2 saw cuts 10 feet apart completely across the track from rail to rail. Now, in most cases, you can find an expansion joint in the track near the area you wish to lay your antenna that may be used as a substitute for a saw cut. Now take one of the 2 leads in the saw cut or expansion joint and run it from rail to rail. Wrap any excess back upon itself in the track in order to keep the signal from radiating out the end. Now do this 10 feet away with the other antenna lead. Get out your silicone and silicone them leads into the track. Standard silicone's just fine. Make sure you let it dry up before you run any carts on the track. Now, if you're not sure where to put the antenna, just use the main transmitter to test cart slowdown times. Shut down a cart as it approaches the pit entrance to gauge the necessary distance. If you got an EX52, hey, get kind of fancy. Hit the crawl button, see what happens. If you've got the EX56, use the all stop. The main transmitter works just like the pit control transmitter. Every morning you should be testing the shutdown system on every one of your carts. Now to do that properly, you should have an attendant right here working the main console. If you have a spin out on the track, the system should always be used to slow or shut down the carts before any attendant actually goes out to help. The operator of the main control should also watch for attendant signals. Attendants who are watching the session will signal if the carts are bumping and need a warning. Now with the full console, the attendant has the ability to shut down any individual cart that might be causing problems, sort of a black flag. This should be done only when it's safe. Be careful not to stop or slow down a cart if it's directly in front of another moving cart. But remember, if you wait too long to warn a problem driver, he or she may not know why you have slowed the cart down. And in most cases, it's better to slow all the carts, even if you're only warning one bad driver. Now, sometimes you've got to stop all the carts on the track. You have a big old spin out with a bunch of carts. You got to tell all the drivers of the problem and tell them to get their foot off the gas and hit the brake. A driver's first instinct when the power is lost is to stomp on the gas. Well, this situation will arise many times during the life of your go-karts and can really cause excessive and unnecessary wear in the equipment. You don't want that. When the session is coming to a close, the attendant will turn on the pit loop transmitter. Now, some of the transmitters are tied right to the traffic light system and come on as soon as the light goes red. And when the attendant activates the pit loop transmitter, be sure that he or she waits for a little break between the carts. Got to give them time to cross the antenna and slow down before they enter the pit area. Now allow the slowed down carts to enter the pit area, and remember, prior to starting the next session, the attendant will have to reset the carts. Remember, green button means go. All right, now you're thinking to yourself, why do we have to have a pit loop transmitter? Why not just slow all the carts down with the main transmitter while the session is over? Pretty simple answer. The pit antenna sends out a local signal just to the part of the track right before the finish line. If you slowed them all down at once, what about the poor back markers? They're way back in turn number 2. It could take forever for them to make it all the way back to the pit area. With the pit loop transmitter, it keeps full power to the carts until they reach the predetermined slowdown area. This keeps things moving. Maintenance on the go-karts should only be provided by qualified personnel, trained personnel. For every 10 carts you have at your track, you should have the following spare parts on hand. Let's start with a spare receiver for the cart itself and a spare cable for that receiver. Now, if you use any of these items, you'll also need a spare, a sensor disc, or a spare servo. Again, that's if your system uses these items. Rule of thumb, 1 spare of these for every 10 carts. Now let's take a moment and talk about some of the problems that you might find yourselves having to troubleshoot in maintenance. Let's start with the main console. Problem number one, the console doesn't work, doesn't light up, shows no sign of operating. First step, make sure it's plugged in to a normal 110 volt outlet. Try plugging in another device to make sure the outlet actually has power. The next step would be to check the power supply to the main console. With the power supply plugged in, check the power with a voltmeter on the two outsidemost pins that plug into the unit. If you're sure the unit is getting proper power and it still doesn't function, give us a call here at J&J and arrange for a repair.